What's up, Airsofters? You know, PCCs, or pistol caliber carbines, are becoming more and more popular not only in the real firearm world, but also in Airsoft. Platforms continue to get smaller and smaller and more compact. And while that's a really cool concept, and while we're seeing a lot more ergonomic platforms accomplish the goal of a compact system with a pistol caliber round, I think we often forget the origins of pistol caliber carbines. And that's by taking a pistol and slapping a stock on it. Introducing the ASG B&T USW A1. Now, the concept of slapping a stock on an otherwise stock standard pistol is not a new concept. It's been done for the last 100 years. There really aren't any modern renditions of this age-old design motif. Introducing the relatively new USW system. Now, back in about 2017, B&T developed a universal service weapon conversion system, allowing you to convert the lower frame of an existing popular pistol platform to their universal service weapon concept. Platforms like the Glock 17, the Walther PPQ, and others made a otherwise standard secondary into a functioning personal defense weapon, which is really kind of the blending of a pistol caliber carbine and a standard pistol. The folding stock design and shape are probably going to feel pretty familiar to those that have used a B&T based MP9. During that design and development, B&T wanted a platform that could function and holster like a standard sidearm, but transition to being a full-sized or semi-full-sized personal defense weapon, increasing accuracy out to 100 yards and still allowing for high adaptability with the ability to attach accessories and ultimately keep it as small as they possibly could. And thus the USW kind of ecosystem was born. This happens to be the USW A1, which is offered from B&T in real life as a full-fledged sidearm, or personal defense weapon. It comes with all of the functionality and doesn't require you to convert from another existing pistol platform. And with that, you get a couple really cool things. We've talked about the USW's ability to, have a brace, as well as having pick rails to attach accessories like lights, lasers, optics, and things like that. In fact, there are so many companies taken with this design that they've even got specific optics and flashlights developed for this platform to make it even more usable. Now, all of that's well and good for the real version of the USW, but we want to know how all of those adaptations and features function in the world of Airsoft. The pick rail up top giving you the option to choose between optics, the ergonomics of a pistol, and hopefully the performance of magazines and a gas system that already exist in the Airsoft world in other CZ-based pistols. And that's because the USW shares a lot of similarity with CZ-based gas systems, in Airsoft that is. And that all begs the question, with pistol caliber carbines getting smaller and smaller, more compact, and more pistol caliber carbine kits being available to adapt pistols into PCCs and PDWs, does there exist a place for a pistol with an integrated stock? Is this more usable, more transportable, and ultimately more effective on the Airsoft field? Let me know what you guys think in the comments section below. Let's take a look at how the USW A1 comes to you in the box. The box has a bright red cover with USW A1 on it, as well as a graphic of the USW A1. Underneath, we also get a look at both the instruction manual included with the USW A1 and the styrofoam packaging, which holds the USW A1 in place, as well as one CO2 magazine with the +2 insignia on the base plate. A couple BBs included in the package as well to get you started, and a Allen wrench to remove the screw for the CO2 magazine. The USW shares many of its internal parts with other ASG CZ products like the SPO1 and the 75B. In fact, the magazines are cross-compatible. To disassemble the USW A1, simply eject the magazine. You're going to retract the stock till the lines on the frame and the slide meet up, which will allow you to push out the body pin. In fact, you may find it easier to extend the folding stock before you do this. Line up those lines, push the body pin out towards the left-hand side. Removing that allows you to slide the slide off, where you'll get a good look at the lower parts inside the frame. Note the optic bridge stays in place during disassembly. Looking at the top, we get a better look at both the hop-up adjustment And if we remove both the guide rod and the outer and inner barrel combination, we'll get access to the blowback unit components, as well as seeing inside the upper portion of the slide. And of course, this gives us a better look at both the hop-up unit, the hop-up unit adjustment, and how the outer barrel and inner barrel are tied together. One other note, like the SP01, this uses a plastic guide rod with a metal spring. The material on the buffer for this spring is actually a better quality than the SP01 and should result in a more durable buffer. Reassembly is simply the reverse of that. Insert your outer barrel, slide it back to meet up with the hop-up unit, insert your guide rod with the buffer facing the rear, align the rear of the guide rod with the pin on the blowback unit, and then reattach the slide following the full-length rails like so. Now, to reinsert the pin, you'll want to line up the slide with the front of the frame. Go ahead and press the pin in partially, then reline up your index marks, push the pin home, and you're reassembled. You know, it's interesting. Despite having the stock, the whole system feels very familiar, and that's important because the USW has its origins in a pistol rather than a carbine kit that's been adapted onto a pistol. And designing this system from the ground up allows for really familiar and comfortable controls while still giving you the usability of having that stock to stabilize your shots. Although the B&T USW looks somewhat alien in terms of some of the features that they've included to make the whole system come together, there are design cues from a very standard and popular weapons platform that you'll find here. You'll notice that not only are we using a CZ SP01/CZ Shadow 2 magazine, because the grip angle and the gas system are designed around an existing ASG CZ platform. In fact, the lower half of the frame is very CZ inspired. I might even liken it to something similar to a Sphinx pistol with the rubberized grip in the back, which is very, very comfortable and gives you plenty of grip on the front side as well. The magazine release feels really comfortable and is in its standard position. You have a functioning safety, which is great and easy to access with your thumb, like so, as is the slide release, like so. So all the pistol controls are gotten out of the way very, very quickly. Up top, we've got a full metal slide. Some really interesting things going on the slide are the enlarged areas to allow you to rack the pistol, or rack the slide. And that's really important because the rear slide serrations, or where the rear slide serrations would normally be, are covered by the rear sight bridge and of course the folding stock mechanism. Just under that, we've got a full metal mid-frame. Now, this is aluminum, so it keeps the weight down, but it's still nice and robust. Now, some other throwbacks, or I guess similarities to the CZ SP01 and Shadow 2 are the trigger mechanism. So most of your internals are going to be reasonably compatible. I think it's safe to assume with those platforms. So if you need replacement parts and things like that, that should be pretty easy. But why I bring that up is the trigger is going to feel right at home if you're used to shooting a Shadow 2 or a CZ SP01 or even one of ASG's CZ75Bs. Really nice trigger, and the thing I particularly like is the double action. So double action trigger, once it cycles, it's got a nice audible reset and a really positive break. Really repeatable shots, and the addition of that brace makes follow-up shots even faster. Transitioning between folded and fully extended are made really easy by the inclusion of the paddle right on the side of the frame. Now, that finger paddle is really easy to depress forward with your finger. The stock is spring loaded and allows you to roll it into place and lock it in place so you don't get into any deflection when it's in use. And this is just one of several attachments that have upgraded the USW from a standard pistol platform into a really usable universal service weapon, USW. In addition to the folding stock that's permanently affixed, you have a rear sight bridge. Now that's been done in lieu of a rear sight. And on the real USW, Aimpoint designed a specific optic for the USW. Now, because this is Airsoft and we all like options, and because there aren't a whole lot of licensed Aimpoint Airsoft products on the market, ASG elected to go with a rear Picatinny rail to allow you to attach any RDS that you want. Now, personally, I really like this brand new UTG. It's got a one button on and off, and it has several levels of brightness. But really, you could put any RDS that you want here, or even a T1, I suppose, if you wanted, although the RDS just looks cooler. And up front, we of course have our standard pick rail for the attachment of flashlights and lasers. One thing I will caution you on, though, is if you get a real wide flashlight, it can run into issues with pressing the stock outwards if your flashlight's too wide. And that pressure can at times release the stock. So try and plan ahead for whatever flashlight or laser combo you go with. You want to stay within kind of the dimensions of the frame itself. Finally, that brings us to our front end. Now these do come with an orange tip, and that orange tip is threaded to allow for the attachment of mock suppressors and tracer units. And I've got one on here. Now really, this is not my favorite look for a tracer for this platform. In fact, I would have much rather been using the B&T tracer unit from ASG. But the reality is that with batteries in it, that tracer unit is much too heavy for this barrel. And by pulling that barrel down, you're riding too tightly on the top or the underside of the slide, and you're going to get lockup issues, and that's what I found during testing. Now, hopefully there's a lighter weight option that looks a little bit cooler than something like this, but I definitely think it's cool that they've given you 14mm threads, so you've got options, just something to be aware of. Despite having a deployable stock, this is still a pistol, so I want to test it at kind of standard pistol engagement distances, starting with 25 feet. You know, one of the really nice things about having the integrated or attachable red dot sight is once you get it zeroed, you can really snap fire this thing and not take a whole lot of time to aim, which means that even at 25 feet, I'm able to keep most of my shots in the A zone. But let's see at distance if 2.5s and CO2 make any bit of difference in accuracy. Come on. This is where the stock really shines. I know this is not a new concept, having a stock on a pistol, but that increased stability is going to hopefully give us better accuracy at distance. You know, it's really interesting what I'm noticing. A couple things. Although my shots are a little high, and that's because maybe the wind or I've got my hop up set a little bit too high, but all my shots are really repeatable in terms of grouping. The other thing I'm noticing is that I can have my face really close to the pistol because, you know, I'm leaning down on the stock and looking through the optic. And because it doesn't have a full travel slide, and because the sight bridge covers the gas half of the slide, I'm not getting any gas in my face. It's not an uncomfortable or unpleasurable shooting experience. And that's not something I expected. I expected to be getting gas up in my nose from the gas leaking out the sides of the slide. Now maybe that's helped in part by the fact that the rails of the slide go completely down along the frame, you know, kind of eliminating the ability for gas to come out, unlike traditional pistols or other pistols in Airsoft. But I really like that about the USW. I wanted to come out here not because I'm really worried about accuracy, because at 100 feet with a support pistol like this, you're really not going to be all that accurate. But how unaccurate are we going to be? So rather than aiming at one of our EMG, IDPA, IPSC size targets, I'm going to try to hit one of my metal plates down there. It's going to take me a couple shots, but let's see if we can do it. So obviously I'm a little overhopped for 2.5s, but it's still hittable, even at this distance. And for a non-primary, a secondary, a backup gun for a sniper, that's pretty good. Before we do our chrono test, I wanted to mention a few things about magazine compatibility. Now, the magazines that come with the USW are labeled USW on the back. And you might note that they look very, very similar to Shadow 2 magazines. And that's because they're almost exactly the same as Shadow 2 magazines. And I'll show you the one difference. The label. That's literally it. For the majority of the test, we've been using 0.25 gram BBs. For the Chrono, I've swapped out to 2 O's. And in this magazine, I've got a fresh CO2 cartridge. I want to see what it's going to perform like on a fresh CO2 cartridge, and then we'll shoot one that's about half spent and see if there's a big fluctuation in terms of FPS. Really nice consistency on CO2, just about 300 to 310. Obviously, you're going to get a little bit of fluctuation just because gas expansion and all that. But really nice consistency out of the CO2, and that's on a fresh cartridge. Swapping out, we've got a half spent cartridge, also with 2 O's. Gotta be honest, that one was just about empty. I thought it was about half full, but it was just about empty. And even at just about empty, in fact, that was really just about it, we're still seeing FPS of 230 to 250. So the nice thing about CO2 is it continues to be powerful until just about when it's about to give out, kind of like a LiPo battery versus a nickel metal battery. But I'm interested to see what the FPS is on green gas. Now I've refilled this green gas magazine and filled it with 0.20 gram BBs. See if there's a big difference between this and CO2. That'll give us an idea of how these are valved. You know, there's often a concern when it comes to CO2 versus green gas and whether one's going to shoot harder than the other, one's going to be more reliable. And although on CO2 you get a harder kick of the platform, what you're not getting is a huge variation in FPS. So the green gas, although it doesn't kick as hard, is giving you the same forward gas pressure, which is resulting in about 305 to 310 FPS. So regardless of whether you decide to go with the USW mags that come with the gun, or you want to go with an SPO1 magazine that's green gas powered, or a Shadow 2 magazine that's also CO2 powered, you're not going to get a whole lot of fluctuation between them, which is nice because then you can kind of gear your gas choice depending on where you're playing. Cold environment, you're worried about cool down in your magazines, go to CO2. Indoors, you want to bring green gas along and not have to worry about messing around with the base plate and redoing that whole rigmarole the whole time. Or maybe you forgot your EMG mag pick at home. Having a couple green gas magazines will ensure you've still got great performance without having to go through the whole CO2 process. So, really nice. One thing we haven't really mentioned is the existence of sights without the optics. So I stripped it down, took all the accessories off so you could get an idea for what the sights look like without. And they're kind of non-existent. You do have a front sight, it's a front sight ramp, and the rear sight is effectively the gap between the Picatinny at the back sighting down through the front sight. Ultimately, I think you're going to get better performance just shelling out for an integrated RDS. And in order to get a sight picture, you got to really compress down onto the stock so that you can look through the Picatinny at the almost non-existent front sight. And we're out of gas. You know, that brings me to a really interesting observation. Oftentimes, when I'm shooting a pistol as a sidearm, I really don't notice the need to reload all that often because I'm not using my pistol all that often. But with the included stock and the red dot sight and the ability to mount accessories and the ability to take a tracer unit, I could definitely see this being used as a primary. And if you're using it as a primary, you're going to be shooting it a lot more often and potentially reloading a lot more often. Which makes ASG's announcement that they'll be manufacturing extended magazines for the USW all the more important. An extended magazine will give you more BBs, more gas capacity, and ultimately a more usable primary than it is as a plain old backup. And I certainly think it has the looks and functionality to make it a primary, with one caveat. I don't know of a single holster other than the one specifically designed for the USW that this will fit in. In fact, I don't even know if this will fit in one of those fabric multi-fit holsters. So if you plan on keeping this on your hip, you're gonna have to get creative or make a friend that does kydex. After using this today, I guess the question comes down for me personally, if I would run one. Well, it's no secret to you guys that I really like CZs. I've got an SP01 and a Shadow 2, and I love them both very, very much. They're really robust platforms that respond really well to CO2. They're accurate, they're easy to maintain and to upgrade if I needed parts, although there aren't a whole lot of parts available. And that, of course, will become an issue with these if you wanted to upgrade them to be super speed softy. But it begs the question, where would I use this? I love the ergonomics. I think it's very comfortable. It's easy to use. The low bore axis means really low recoil. I mean, I know it's an airsoft gun, but it's got even lower recoil thanks to the stabilizer brace that they've got included. And I think I would use this in a game where I didn't intend to holster it because I don't want to waste time with trying to find or make a holster. To me, this is an ideal platform for using in close quarters, tight mout games where you have really short game time lengths, and so you don't really need to worry about holstering it between games. You can just walk off the field and put it down, regas your mags, reload, and you're ready to go. And because I'm not worried about holstering it, that opens up even more possibilities. You know, there's a growing trend of people that like to HPA tap and HPA convert their pistols, and I would say that as an alternative to a pistol caliber carbine, the USW is a fantastic option for somebody looking to do an extended magazine setup or an HPA tapped magazine because you've got more stability than you'd have with a standard pistol. It's still really wieldable, and if you don't want the stock, no big deal, fold it out of the way, and then you've got a really tight close quarters pistol for using in speed QB games. The attachment of the tracer unit makes it really great for low light games, and so overall, not only is it comfortable and performs well, but I think this has a lot of usefulness where other pistols tend to fall short. So if you're interested in it, you might want to check it out on our website. Let me know in the comments section below on what you guys think is the best use of the universal service weapon from ASG and B&T. Looks cool, functions pretty well, and I'm excited to see what you guys think about it. As always, make sure you subscribe to our Facebook, Instagram, and here on YouTube. In fact, on YouTube, you might want to click the bell notification icon to be notified of when our latest video content drops. And as always, play hard, play safe, play responsibly.
And action. It's a little quick. Stay out. Goof. Yeah.